This is the story of a man who survived one of the most extreme drug-related feuds the Netherlands had ever seen. This feud lasted over a decade, and it was all over a missing shipment of coke, with a value of 5 million euros. Not only was this man a key player in the feud, it is said that he might have started it all by doing something that could only result in unprecedented violence. And that's not all he is accused of. It is also said that he is the mastermind behind the sudden disappearance of a man that till this day has never been found again. And to make his story even more intriguing, he is allegedly the mastermind behind the kidnapping of the little brother of Belgium's biggest drug lord. Those are some serious accusations. But what's the truth in this all? Here are the answers. This is the story of Houssine Ait S. Houssine Ait S, also known as Hoos or the Mayor, was born in 1979 in Amsterdam, where he grew up in Amsterdam-Zuid. At a young age, Houssine started committing numerous crimes with boys from his neighborhood. Together, they quickly switched from petty street crime to organized crime. Eventually, Houssine entered the drug smuggling world together with his friend Gwenette and Najeb Bouhbouh. They started off in the ecstasy business and later on moved to the more lucrative coke business. Life was good. Lots of money was being made and everything seemed to take its courses. But then, Gwenette, the leader of the group, got arrested in 2007. While Gwenette was incarcerated, Houssine and Najeb kept the business running. In May 2008, Gwenette managed to pull off a spectacular escape from prison. He immediately fled to Morocco, where he stayed in one of Houssine's houses, after which he fled to Belgium. In 2010, Gwenette got arrested again, and that's when he made a decision that would change everything and cause a decade of violence costing more than 20 lives. His constant run-ins with the law made it impossible for him to run the organization with full focus. He decided to make Najeb Bouhbouh the head of the organization until he was able to take full control of it himself again. This decision made Houssine furious. After all he did for Gwenette, he decided to opt for someone else as the leader of the organization. Houssine called it quits and left the organization and start for himself. He did so with his brother-in-law, Bouhbouh A. In 2012, Gwenette was back in business. Despite their falling out, Houssine arranged a shipment with him, not as friends, just as business partners, with one thing in mind: making money. It was a shipment of 200 kilos of coke, scheduled to arrive in the port of Antwerp. Unfortunately, it did not go as smooth as it was supposed to. Not at all. The shipment arrived according to plan in the port, but went missing. It was unclear where the shipment went, and this uncertainty caused friction amongst both parties. They already weren't on the best of terms with each other, and now this? Did they really rip us? Both parties must have asked themselves. Several rumors started spreading about what may have happened. Instead of peacefully hashing it out with each other, a decade-long nightmare started. A nightmare that would see over 20 lives lost. It erupted after Najeb Bouhbouh, the man who Gwenette chose as his right-hand man instead of Houssine, was taken out in Antwerp. This allegedly happened per the orders of Houssine and Bouhbouh on the 18th of October 2012. Around the time of this incident, Houssine fled from Amsterdam and frequently moved between Morocco and Panama. After that incident, Gwenette wanted to avenge his right-hand man, and it would go back and forth. None of those involved were safe. One of the most notable incidents in the feud was the head in front of the Fairouz Lounge. The Fairouz Lounge was a shisha lounge that was seen as the base of Houssine's organization, a lounge where his associates would frequently meet each other. On the 9th of March 2016, a head was set empathetically towards shisha lounge Fairouz, as if the head was to directly look at the people behind the windows. Unfortunately, I can't get into detail without violating the platform's rules, but this is a pretty good depiction of how far these two groups went. And mind you, this was already 4 years after the shipment went missing. If you think this is crazy, I've made an entire 4-episode miniseries about this. Be sure to check it out to see exactly every hit that's taken place. Too much has happened to discuss in this video. Believe me, it was pure chaos. While that chaos took over Amsterdam, Houssine remained safely at bay, far away from Amsterdam. It did not stop him from smuggling drugs though. We know that the world of coke smuggling is absolutely ruthless. One mistake can have serious consequences. We've seen it after the missed shipment of 200 kilos back in 2012. In 2016, Houssine got involved in yet another shocking case of revenge after a shipment gone wrong. It all started in June 2015, when Houssine had a shipment of 320 kilos of coke coming into the port of Antwerp from South America. He gave the job to a Belgian contact called Abdelkader Bouker. It was his job to get the coke out of the containers and distribute it further along the line to several stash houses. On the 19th of June 2015, the shipment arrived in the port of Antwerp and the 320 kilos was swiftly taken out of the container by Abdelkader's men. All seemed well. I say seemed because what the men weren't aware of was that the shipment had been tipped off. Police knew it was coming and decided to keep an eye on it and let it all play out to see who was involved. It led them to the parking of the City Inn Hotel in Bouhbouh. They observed Abdelkader and two of his close associates receive the coke and put it in the trunk of their cars. That's the moment when the police made their move and arrested all of them. Houssine was furious about the failed shipment. The coke, well worth over 10 million euros, was seized, and that's when the trouble for Abdelkader started. Abdelkader was jailed for a short time. Right after his release, Houssine made it clear to him that he wanted to see his money back. "You took delivery of the shipment, so you have to pay," Houssine would have said. However, Abdelkader firmly disagreed, saying, "The transport was already on the radar of the police, and that was your responsibility, not mine, so it's not my fault." Over the course of several months, Houssine tried to force Abdelkader to pay, though to no avail. More force was applied by shooting at several residences linked to Abdelkader. However, he still remained unwilling to pay, and that's when Houssine had to take a more drastic approach. He decided to kidnap Abdelkader. But those plans quickly had to be put on hold, because trouble occurred for Houssine himself. Because he got arrested in Morocco. It was his fake passport that caught the attention of the border patrol. It was assumed that he came from his hideaway place in Central America, where he had been hiding for a long time. After his arrest, Moroccan police conducted two searches in two separate properties in Marrakesh that belonged to him. This led them to finding 34 expensive watches, 10 mobile phones, 2 tablets, 16,000 euros in cash, and 10 fake passports. Dutch authorities were delighted to hear the news. They gladly saw Morocco extradite Houssine, as he was of course a prime suspect in all the violence happening in Amsterdam. In addition, he still had 244 days of prison left for aggravated assault in Amsterdam back in 2002 and 2008, for which he was internationally wanted for. Unfortunately for them, Morocco does not extradite their nationals. This meant that there was zero chance that Houssine would be extradited to the Netherlands. Therefore, the Netherlands asked Morocco to prosecute Houssine for identity fraud, as well as to jail him for the 244 days he still had outstanding. It wasn't only that he would then finally serve a sentence. It would also give them time to build a more serious case against him regarding drug smuggling and possibly even the involvement in ordering multiple hits on the ongoing feud back in Amsterdam. On the 20th of August 2015, Houssine was sentenced to just 4 months in jail for identity fraud. To the frustration of the Dutch police, the Moroccan judge did not rep a word about the outstanding jail time of 244 days that Houssine still had to serve. After serving his time, Houssine was released, and the Dutch police were left empty-handed. He could now go on with his master plan to kidnap Abdelkader. To do so, he hired 4 notorious gangsters from Paris. Those 4 men went on to observe every move Abdelkader made for several months. They followed him 24/7 by putting a tracker under his car. They continuously observed his home, the home of his mother, which he frequently visited, and more. In mid-July 2016, the world of Antwerp was in an uproar. No one had heard of or seen anything from Abdelkader for over 5 days. Not his wife, his associates, no one. Well, that's because Houssine ordered the 4 Parisian gangsters to get into action. He had him successfully kidnapped on the 7th of July 2016. The kidnappers immediately locked him in an apartment in Brussels. To prove that they had him, the kidnappers dropped Abdelkader's passport in the mailbox of his closest associate. As further evidence, they also had sent a recorded message to Abdelkader's wife, in which you could hear him say, "I am alive. This is not a game. Follow their instructions." Shortly after, another voice recording is sent by someone with a French accent saying, "Don't go to the police, or we will eliminate him." Houssine initially wanted to see 10 million euros. That was about the same amount of money the failed shipment had cost him. It was eventually brought down to 5 million. As Abdelkader's entourage let the kidnappers know they could only fetch 1.6 million euros in cash right now, the ransom was lowered to 3 million. The 1.6 million euros were paid to Houssine as a sign of goodwill, that the rest of the money would soon follow. However, ultimately, it would not even come that far. All contact between the kidnappers and Abdelkader's entourage stopped. They started to doubt whether Abdelkader was still alive. The main reason for that doubt was that the kidnappers refused to do a simultaneous trade of the remaining money for Abdelkader. Rumors started swirling. Eliminated in Ibiza, dissolved in acid in Amsterdam, buried in the Sahara. The wildest things were speculated. Whatever it may be, Abdelkader was nowhere to be found. And that wasn't the only kidnapping credited to Houssine, because just 4 months later, he allegedly had someone kidnapped yet again. On the 15th of November 2016, a man exited a basic fit gym in Antwerp. CCTV footage showed that as he walked towards his parked car, a van abruptly stopped next to him, and several men hopped out. The man can be seen getting aggressively pushed into the van, and in a matter of 30 seconds, the van sped off. They had their target. The following 5 days, it remained silent regarding the apparent kidnapping. Then, all of a sudden, a man called Othman el B reached out to the police of Antwerp. He informed them that his little brother Younes was kidnapped and that he had been in contact with the kidnappers. He said that they demanded ransom, millions in ransom. Othman also named the mastermind behind this kidnapping. According to him, it was none other than Houssine. For those of you unfamiliar with Othman el B, he is deemed to be one of the biggest drug lords of Belgium. He started off as a young guy who got the coke out of the containers in the port of Antwerp. However, Othman was smart. Instead of being paid in cash, he asked to be paid in coke. He would get his payment in coke for the same price the importer bought it for in South America, typically somewhere between 2,000 and 6,000 euros per kilo. But we all know that once the coke arrives safely in the port of Antwerp, the price immediately skyrockets to somewhere around 25,000 euros and up per kilo. Thus, selling the coke himself would make him way more money. He then went on to build his empire and rose from the bottom of the ladder all the way up to the top. Everyone wants to be part of the winning team, right? Well, keep that in mind. By now, he is arguably the wealthiest Belgian drug smuggler, but on paper, he is nothing more than a luxury watch seller and property investor in Dubai. For Othman's full story, be sure to check out the video on my channel. It's a very good one. Back to the story. Othman went on to give very specific and detailed information to the police about Houssine and his associates. He even knew the serial number of the PGP BlackBerry Houssine used. Meanwhile, Younes was being held in a hideout somewhere in Brussels. Weeks went by. Younes was then moved to Paris. During this whole ordeal, Othman remained in Dubai, as he kept feeding the police of Antwerp with valuable information. After 37 long days, Younes managed to escape. For days on end, he used a spoon to forge the lock on his handcuffs. Then, he managed to escape through a window with bed sheets tied together. At least, that was the story that was brought out. Does that sound believable to you? Or did Othman just pay the ransom? Word on the street was that Othman paid several millions and or kilos of coke, as well as luxury watches. Othman himself debunked this. Stories have surfaced which say I paid the ransom in money, gold, or even coke. Those stories are nonsense. My brother escaped on his own from that apartment in Paris. After the release of Younes, the investigation went very quick. 4 French men were arrested on the 24th of January 2017 in Amsterdam. Mohamed K, Bouhbouh S, Houssine Ait S, and Rashid B, the same 4 men that were suspects in the Abdelkader Bouker kidnapping. Younes recognized Bouhbouh due to his voice. According to him, Bouhbouh once said, "We have done this before," potentially implying to the kidnapping of Abdelkader. Mohamed S said during an interrogation, "If 2 groups in the environment have a problem, the 2 groups stay together until the problem is solved. That is not kidnapping." Yup, that's one way to put it. The biggest piece of evidence that Houssine was behind this kidnapping came after the arrest of Adil el M. Younes said that it was Adil who brought him food while he was kidnapped, but Adil's role later seemed bigger than that. According to the police, Adil stood in direct contact with Houssine. During a search of Adil el M's flat, police found a Romanian passport with Houssine's photo, as well as a whole series of passport photos of him. Adil also had a PGP phone that had Houssine as a contact. Lastly, Adil also appeared to have several very expensive watches in his house. The investigators think these were part of the ransom money Othman paid Houssine for his little brother Younes. Remember, Othman is said to be a luxury watch seller in Dubai. The question you probably have is, why did Houssine have Othman's little brother kidnapped? Well, that's a very interesting story in itself. To find the answer to the question, we need to go back to the year 2014, May the 22nd to be exact. Gwenette's Martha is struck 80 times after he had just left a restaurant in Amsterdam-Zuid. With this hit, Houssine's biggest rival had been taken out. This was a critical blow, and it was deemed that Houssine and his brother-in-law Bouhbouh had now prevailed and made an end to the violent feud. For months, the Dutch and Belgian underworld waited to see who would take over the void Gwenette left in the coke smuggling world. He held a large portion of the market, and with his passing, it was now up for grabs. As part of the victory over Gwenette, many expected Houssine to take over a share of the market. Houssine himself most likely also thought that he would be able to take over that share, but that wasn't the case, not at all. People that once worked for Houssine proved themselves to be disloyal. Instead of working with him, they opted to work with Othman. Remember? Everyone wants to be part of the winning team. And at that point, it was Othman that was the biggest winner due to his rapid rise. Slowly but surely, Houssine wasn't able to utilize the port of Antwerp anymore, as he once did. He was strategically cut out by Othman and the rest of the Belgians. His shipments kept getting intercepted, and if he had a successful shipment, he had to pay large commissions to the people in the port of Antwerp who took the coke out of the containers for him, leaving him with very thin profit margins. It all simply boiled down to loyalty. Despite Gwenette being from Amsterdam, he always had good relations with several important groups from Antwerp. He was just a well-respected man there. Remember that he also hid in Belgium after he escaped prison. That was all made possible by several groups in Antwerp that took care of him. This was not the case for Houssine. His relationships in Antwerp were pure business, and he just wasn't as respected as Gwenette was. The Belgians did not have any loyalty towards him. Instead of working with Houssine from Amsterdam, the groups decided to keep it closer to home and work with fellow Antwerp native Othman, a win-win for all of them. Someone close to the matter said, every time Houssine wants to do something in the port, he attempts to recruit some guys from Mocro in Antwerp. However, they always demand a very high percentage of the profit to help him out, and most of the time, these shipments fail. These constant failures in turn led to the South Americans who supply the coke to rather work with Othman instead. He has built very stable routes and is a hassle-free partner for them. It can be concluded that the most likely reason for the kidnapping of Othman's little brother Younes was nothing more than revenge for Houssine. Revenge for Othman taking the market share Gwenette had left and forcing him out of the game, or at least making it very hard for Houssine to be of meaning in the game. Checkmates, I guess. Houssine is one of the few left of those involved in the Mocro feud that erupted back in 2012. The majority is either 6 feet deep or behind bars. Very few have made it out alive. As of late, there have not been any incidents credited to this feud anymore. After nearly a decade, it seems as if it is finally over. In 2019, Houssine briefly spoke to a Dutch crime journalist after this journalist published on his website that Houssine had disappeared. He said, "That's not true. I'm in Morocco. I'm doing my work here. Nobody is searching for me." We will never know if anyone is still looking for Houssine, as he allegedly was involved in a lot. We still have to say allegedly because thus far, Houssine has only been a suspect in all the aforementioned cases and has not been convicted for any crimes yet. Not for the hits that took place back in Amsterdam, not for the drug smuggling, not for the kidnapping of Abdelkader Bouker, nor the kidnapping of Houssine el B. That leaves us with a couple of questions still unanswered. Will he ever step foot in Amsterdam? Well, that is not very likely. Is he still involved in the underworld after being put in checkmate by Othman? That is a question we'll have to end this video with. A question we most likely will never know the answer to. If you have enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like, a comment sharing your thoughts, and also be sure to subscribe. I'm nearing on that 100,000 mark, which is definitely a dream of mine. It only takes a second for you to do, but immensely helps the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.